Yo, welcome back to the Gene with Kid Podcast 216. You already know how we start. We start off by thanking God for all He has done for me and what He will continue to do for me, but not only me, my family, my friends, and those who I don't even know. Happy Monday. If you are listening to this, we are blessed to see another day. Even if you're listening to this on Tuesday, you are still blessed. So we should take a moment and thank God because somebody somewhere did not wake up, but He has woken us up and He has been with us throughout the day. So that should account for something. Let's take a moment. But without further ado, you know how we start with a scripture of the day, and it's from Psalms 121, verse 1 and 2. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. Let that sink in, whatever that means to you. Just take it in. I felt that one. I think that one is basically saying you looking up to the sky or the mountains and you know where the help comes from. Like no matter what I'm going through in my life, I know where my help comes from. Who gives me strength when I feel like I ain't got it. I know that it comes from the Lord. That's what I got from it. Maybe you guys got something else, but that's what I got from it. But without further ado, let's get into it. The title of this episode is going to be entitled Grief. Again, let that sink in, whatever that means to you. Listen to it. Maybe let us get into it. At some point in our life, most of us, if not all of us, has experienced some type of grief. But before I get into it, I looked up what it means, what grief, a definition of grief. I'm gonna read two things. And the first thing says, grief is a very great sadness, especially at the death of someone. Her grief at her son's death was terrible. Just for an example, it gives you an example. All right? This other article says, that was the definition. This article says, grief is a natural emotion response to a major loss, such as the death of a loved one or other significant losses, such as a divorce or serious illness. It can also be felt by people with terminal illness. Grief can include feelings of sadness, anger, guilt, despair, shock, numbness, denial, and great regret. It can also cause physical problems such as changes in appetite and not being able to sleep. Ooh, that was deep. That was deep. Many of you already know that, but for those of you who do not know, that is what it means. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start from the beginning. I remember when I was a kid, my first experience with losing someone and me feeling some type of grief was when I lost my Uncle Jack. Now, we wasn't that close, but he was always around, if that makes sense. He came over, he worked for Ford for many years, he drove a Ford truck, he had a Honda motorcycle, he had a nice house. He always came around, not only me, but my family, you know, and that always stuck with me, you know, even to come over for a quick second just to talk to us about life and about how we should do certain things in our life, you know, and, you know, it was just very small things, but I just found him always around. So one day, I was at home, I was talking to my grandmother, and she had, excuse the background noise, but they had disclosed that he was no longer with us. So I was like, wow. And I was kind of shocked because I had just saw him. So I didn't want to believe it. So I'm like, okay. Then we went to his funeral. It was sad. I remember just sitting there, just a state of shock. Like, is this real? And I was really sad about it. And then as time went on, I was kind of mad, like, dang, man, why they take him? Because I really felt in my heart that he was a really, really good guy. And I didn't think that he deserved to die. And in the back of my mind, sometimes I would think about it, or sometimes I would be reminded by him because somebody would have like a similar car to what he had. I remember the car, it was a Ford, like a blue Ford Ranger. Yeah, Ford Blue Ranger. And sometimes I was just see it going up and down the road, and I would just think that maybe it was him. But it wasn't. But it just reminded me of him. So I dealt with that. And it didn't make me feel good. And I always found myself sometimes thinking about him. So that was my first experience with grief. But it wasn't, it was bits of sadness. But let's go back to 2009 when I lost my grandmother. Oh, I was devastated. That was the toughest grief one of the toughest griefs that I ever felt. Because this is a person that had did everything for me. She had gotten me and my two brothers out of their system, out of foster care, out of the system, and took us in as her own children. Now keep in mind, my grandmother already had raised her kids. They were grown. So she took the responsibility of 3 small children when she didn't have to. She took parenting classes. She did whatever she had to do to come get us. And that should be, I appreciate it. And right now that should be celebrated because she didn't have to. And Granny, I give you your flowers for that. Because nobody wanted us. Nobody. My own family didn't want us. She was the only one that didn't want to see us in that type of predicament. So, but not only did she do that, she just raised us like her own. She never took anything away from my dad. She never took anything away from my mother because she always told me, no matter what, I know that I'm not your mother. I can't replace your mother and I can't replace your father, but I am here for you always. And it always stuck with me. It always stuck with me. And not only that, she just showed me so much how to be a gentleman, how to talk, how to be responsible, how to listen, how to be respectable, how to address people by their last name, not their first name, because they were old enough to be my mother or father, or sometimes grandmother, or all 3, to respect people, to outthink people, to give people respect even though they don't deserve it. It was just so many things. Showed me how to wash clothes. Showed me how to fold clothes. It was just so much vital things that she was teaching me how to be a hard worker. Because my grandmother got up and went to work every single day. My grandmother didn't miss any days until she got very, very ill. And they forced her to take time off. It was just so much. So when she passed, I'm like, it was like, I know many of us, you guys ever went on the top of a roller coaster and then when it go down, like your heart drop or your stomach drop, whatever, but you don't know what I mean, but it just dropped. Like, that's how I felt when she died. And I'm like, this can't be real. And I found myself crying. I found myself in, like the article said, I was in denial. I was in denial about it. She had a phone number. It was 216-702-5289. I remember calling it, and I just wanted her to answer just one last time. I just wanted her to answer. And I was like, wow, man, I just was hurt. And I remember just going into a slump, start drinking, heavily drinking, smoking weed, just doing things that I normally would do, but times 2 or 3. And it wasn't good. It wasn't good because I was sad because I didn't know what I was going to do without her, because she was very impactful in my life. I didn't think I could live without her, because no matter, she was always there for me. She was a phone call away. I could call her about anything. She would listen to me. And I felt like she was one of the only few that really understood me in my life. And she is missed. She died in 2009. And Granny, I miss you. And there's not a day, there's not an hour that I don't think about you. You are missed very much. But not only by me, by my siblings, my family, and some of my friends that knew you. You are missed. That was a major blow. Then after that, I dealt with grief, major grief, when I lost my mom. And that fucked me up, excuse my language. I didn't know what to think. 2 major blows. My grandmother in 2009, now my mom in 2013. And I just didn't know what to do. Like, I was sad. Sometimes I didn't want to do anything. I laid around the house all day. I found myself writing a book more frequently, making a diary. It was just so much, man. I just couldn't believe it. And it was, not only did I didn't believe it, I got to see my mom's dead body. So that messed me up even worse, because we had to identify her. We went to her house. I remember her laying there. I remember seeing her laid, stretched out. I remember holding her cold body, and she was just cold. And all I can remember is I just wanted her to wake up one last time. I wanted her to be okay. And I was mad because she was no longer here, but I was mad because I was not where I wanted to be in my life, and I was still trying to become the man that she wanted me to be, and I wasn't there yet. Now, I didn't have nobody to give me that extra push. It just messed me up. And she is missed so much. Mom, I miss you. What would I do to just hug you one last time? What would I do? Just one last time. What would I do? And I just didn't think I could go on. I didn't think. And I know everybody was telling me it was going to be all right. I know everybody tried to comfort me the best they knew how. But I was just stuck. Didn't know what I was going to do. I was still technically homeless. My mom was gone. Didn't have nowhere to go. So many different things. So I dealt with that. And I remember my first time, I remember trying to go to counseling or see a therapist. And I didn't have a good experience because the therapist was telling me how to feel. And I didn't like that. He was telling me how to cope with it. He was telling me how I should get over it. And I didn't like that, because we all deal with things and we all process things differently. We all handle grief differently. We all get over it on our own time. Everything is done differently. So I felt like when I was talking to this guy, it was a rushed experience rather than just letting me have my moments. And I just remember just stopped going. After that experience, I just didn't want to go back. I didn't want to go back. I did not want to go back because I was mad. I was mad at him. And I just lived in my own pity. I didn't do anything. I would talk to people. Sometimes I was angry. Sometimes I was sad. It was just so many different emotions. But I was just around people like my sisters and my brothers, and we were always going through the same thing. So we would hug each other, we would cry on each other, listen to music, and we just try to embrace each other and be in those moments with each other. And I just want to tell y'all that it gets easier, but it takes time. What I also want to say is this. If you are going through grief, you shouldn't have to go through it alone. Maybe somebody close to you has lost a mother. Lean on them. Lean on each other. Embrace each other. That's okay. But don't push people away because you're grieving. Maybe you need space, and that's okay. Take all the space in the world. Maybe you need a hug. Maybe ask for a hug. Maybe you just want to cry on somebody's shoulder. That's okay. But if you're dealing with grief, I just really believe that you shouldn't go through it alone. You should go through it with somebody you love, or your husband, or your wife, or your brother, your sister, somebody to make you feel like it's going to be okay. Even if you can't see it right away. But grief might take years. You might grieve. I grieve my mom every day. I don't always show it as much as I should, but I grieve my mom every day. There's not a second, there's not a minute, there's not an hour I don't think about her, or something that reminds me of her. But just find your way, your best way to try how to get through it. It is not easy. It is not easy. Because in the back of your mind, you're thinking, or at least I was thinking, like, man, you know what? She's going to call me. She's going to pick up that phone. And now I got memories. I got pictures. And sometimes I just look back like, and I might cry. And I look back and I'd be like, you know what? I know my mom would have wanted me to be strong. She would have wanted that for me. So let me do the best that I can. Sometimes my kids ask about her. My kids were too young to remember what she was like. And sometimes I tell them about her. And she's missed very, very much. I'm going to end on this. If you have anybody in your life that means any significance to you, love on them. If you're grieving, let somebody love on you. If you need to be alone, be alone. But at some point, let them embrace you, cuddle you, hold you, lay down with you, something. Cry on their shoulders, whatever. Don't push people away. I'm going to emphasize that. But we all have to learn that it takes time. And I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this because tomorrow my wife lost her mom 1 year ago, and she's still grieving. And babe, I want to say sorry for not being there in the way that you felt I should have been. I'm going to apologize on here. And I just want to let you know that I'm here now for you. Whenever you want to talk about it, I'm here. And I should have been there then. And I'm publicly apologizing to my wife for that. And her mom was a very good woman. I'm glad I had the opportunity to meet her, to talk to her, to hear her stories, for her to share knowledge with me. But my wife is going through it. And I got a glimpse of what she's going through because I'm living with her. But not only that, because I lost my mom. So I got a little glimpse. But all of her emotions, all her feelings, I don't know all of them. But I'm here for you, baby. And I want to say, we never know when it's going to be our last time here on earth. So if you can repolish, reconnect old relationships with your parents or with somebody, try the best you can. Y'all don't have to be best friends, but try to have a conversation and move past it, because you never know if that person is going to be here tomorrow. And when they're no longer here, you might be the one dealing with grief. But it is hard. I'm not talking on this podcast. I was supposed to be finished, but I got more to say. I'm not telling anybody that it's easy. It is hard. But with the time, with God, things will get easier. But you will never, ever stop thinking about them. Ever. And I just want to take this moment to say thank you guys for listening to the Dream with Kid podcast. The title of this podcast episode was called Grief. Feedback, questions, concerns, if any, if you want to, maybe you guys have lost a parent, maybe you lost a relative, maybe you guys are still grieving, maybe this helped you, maybe it didn't, whatever, comments, leave them. I'm looking for feedback. My podcast is available on all platforms. Share this, like, subscribe, Spotify, Pandora. Thanks everybody for taking a moment to listen to my podcast. Thank you. See y'all on Friday.